Thank you.
Senator Ole Kina.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. I rise to support this motion by the distinguished senator from Tana River on effects of upstream activities on the River Tana to the residents of Tana Delta. Mr. Speaker, the residents of Nairobi County receive 80% of their water from the Tana River. And in this country, 70% of our hydropower comes from the River Tana. Mr. Speaker, I have noted keenly the issues that the distinguished senator won't address, and it begs a very big question as to whether KenGen has ever thought of unintended consequences of them releasing the water, because that's what the problem is. Mr. Speaker, I have read keenly the motion, and I would beg that we limit our argument to the effects of the releasing of that water by KenGen and think about the unintended consequences. The distinguished senator has said that KenGen releases water from the 7 Forks dams. The 7 Forks Dam is the same dam that provides us with almost 70% of our electricity, hydropower, in this country. Then it begs the question, why? And what is it that we can do to be able to ensure that we benefit from both the electricity that we're getting from the hydropower and also the communities downstream do not suffer? Because I did not, and I do not believe that when KenGen releases this water, they intended for them to destroy the livelihoods of these communities. But now, as it has been elaborated here and clearly stated, these communities are languishing in poverty. What the distinguished senator did not indicate in his motion is that one of the other big problems is the canal diversion as a result of agricultural activities downstream. Because from the Aberdares, which is the source of the Tana River, going down, there are so many agricultural activities. The canals, water going into Nairobi and water going everywhere. What is it that we can actually be able to do in this country? Because if you compare the activities in Egypt, Mr. Speaker, I went to Egypt. I was in Cairo and went all the way to Alexandria. And you could see that 100% of the population in Egypt lives along the Nile River. It would be excellent if we can all think about this concept of maximizing on the benefits of this water, which ultimately all of it drains into the Indian Ocean, by moving our entire population to live along that river. One of the biggest problems, and this is why I'm glad that the distinguished senator brought this matter here, is that in this country, land use policy is something which is not really highly thought of. Because nothing stops our population, which is growing, which is another problem that my brother should have alluded to, which is another problem. That is why people are affected downstream, huge populations. So when these huge populations are built, even when KenGen decides to dump the water floods and gets to other people who are not even close to the river. You know, every year when we have heavy floods in this country, we're entertained by news of people running around killing hippopotamus, or the other way around, hippopotamus killing human beings along the Tana River. So here's the thing. I think because this Senate pronounces itself through motions, bills, it is about time that this motion does not just become one of those motions which we pronounce ourselves, but we do not follow through. I think the distinguished senator, and I hope that both sides of the aisle will approve this motion, and they'll support this motion, and they'll pass this motion, so that the distinguished senator from Tana River can now follow through and say, Kenyan, the unintended consequences as follows. People have died. You know, these floods, if you go into the internet right now, Mr. Speaker, and you do a Google search on the Tana River irrigation schemes, you will see a lot of flowery, beautiful language in the website saying that people are doing very well. There is no poverty. Poverty has been reduced. You know, there's over 1,600 acres of land where corn is being grown through agriculture or maize. There's like almost 2,600 acres in rice. But today we're being told by the senator who has been elected by the people who understand the geography of that county that people are suffering. I do not know whether this Tana River irrigation scheme project is just showing the good things that are happening, but it's not telling us really what happens on the ground. So, Mr. Speaker, since we need water in Nairobi County, the people of Kitui, who also benefit from this Tana River but are also affected, the people of Isiolo, the people of Lamu, the people of Kilifi, and today, Mr. Speaker, if you try to juxtapose and look at what happens along the River Nile and what happens in Tana River, then you will not be able to understand why people in Kilifi and Kitui right now suffering from the drought. If this river, which has about 100,000 square kilometers and travels around 1,000 kilometers, you know, why is it not being used effectively? So this is a challenge, Mr. Speaker, to the Ministry of Water and to this government, that if you want to really impact life of Kenyans, let us revisit this issue of land use policy. Let us ask our population whether it is possible for them to reserve most of the land and move closer to the river, and then from then, now think of other unintended consequences like pollution, how we are going to be able to manage these things. We can learn from other countries that have been able to use that resource. I've heard my colleagues talk about the treaties, 1959, the Nile treaties, that is benefiting everybody, Sudan, all the way to Egypt, all the way to, along Ethiopia, from Uganda. I would actually also say part of the source of the Nile River also is the Mao forest. So, Mr. Speaker, I think we need now, when we are pronouncing ourselves, we need to think about how we proceed. I have one problem, because I've seen that my brother here is seeking the following. That it says, now therefore, the Senate urges the Ministry of Water and Sanitation and Irrigation in conjunction with the Water Resource Authority to conduct stakeholders' participation before undertaking any major upstream activities, including construction of dams, before the release of water during rainy season and limiting flow of water to River Tana during the dry season. I have a problem with that, Mr. Speaker, because before the distinguished senator came to that conclusion, he has already told us the problem is Kenyan, releasing water from the Seven Forks. So the first thing we should do, first of all, is to invite Kenyan here to understand, why do they do that? Have they thought of the unintended consequences? Number two, develop a policy in line with the Nile Treaty of 1959 to guarantee average annual flow of River Tana. The first question before we even talk about developing, although I don't have a big problem with that, is to ask ourselves, what would it take for us to change the land use policy along the river? And I believe there are so many studies, you know, that have been carried out. One of the studies that I came across, Mr. Speaker, is where, and I hope that, and I don't know whether my colleague, Senator Mungatana, spoke about this. When I was growing up, I used to learn a lot about the communities, the Mijikenda, and the importance of the river to their livelihood, their subsistence. I didn't hear my brother talk about the cultural activities which these people who live along the river rely on this river so that they can be able to continue practicing. I believe the best person to be able to educate us would be him. So if there is any stakeholder engagement which will be taken, the elders who we have now must be invited to tell us how important this river is to them, to their cultural activities. What I like is to come up with mitigation measures to the perennial floods and water scarcity to the residents of Tana Delta. It is literally ununderstandable when you hear that there's a river that flows 1,000 kilometers and then dump all its water or drains into the Indian Ocean, and people have got no water. I think we need to begin realigning our existing resources so that we can prioritize our people. And I think the Ministry of Water and also this other one called Water Resource Agency or Authority need to seriously take these matters that we're discussing here and look at the studies which are there that have been carried out on the benefits, on the challenges of this river flow. We should not just be happy here in Nairobi, taking 80% of the water which is consumed here, 80% of it comes from River Tana. The electricity, the hydro, 70% of it. We should not just be happy with that. We should worry about the people in Tana River. I expect the governor of the great county of Tana to start asking serious questions as to why his people are suffering, yet his county is named after that river. It doesn't make any sense, Mr. Speaker. I want to reiterate on one very important thing, that the people of Tana closely depend on this river for their traditional subsistence. And any changes to the flow of this river will greatly affect them. Some of the things that can help us learn, and I hope that when we pass this motion, the distinguished senator can follow up, is for the entire House to invite Kengen, and this is a matter that we'll take up with the Energy Committee, to invite Kengen and to find out if they have carried out any studies on the effects of the release of the dam. Let us not think about the issue of CSR. Why CSR? You are the one affecting them. One of the things that I'll agree with my colleague, Senator Cheralgei, is that in this country, sometimes we don't really care. It is all about the Benjamins. It is all about money. Because when we sat here with the former senator of Makueni, and now the governor of Makueni, and the governor of Nairobi now, in the Solai Dam, we also have the governor of Nakuru now, and we came up with serious resolution on the issue of the Solai Dam, and none of them were adhered to. You ask yourself whether these people have any humanity in them. And the people that I'm referring to are, number one, the DPP, because we gave serious recommendations on what should follow, the judiciary, the criminal justice system in this country, because people died. So if we are going to reduce ourselves into a talk show in this House, then we might as well fold and go. So this motion now should be one that reminds us of the reason why we are elected by people to be here to represent them. I would hope that by the time the distinguished senator of Tana River goes back to Tana, the people of Tana River will tell him, now, following the resolution or the pronouncement by the Senate, we are now benefiting from this river Tana. It is not a curse for us. I hear that the current administration want to sign contracts with independent companies to be able to buy water. Why? When we have billions of shillings, if we can be able to divert this water into private farms, why not look at the budget of the Ministry of Water and spend the money to be able to help these people? So, Mr. Speaker, sir, I support and I sincerely thank the distinguished senator from Tana River for bringing this motion. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Abbas Sheikh Mohammed.
Thank you, Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I wish to support the motion.